Here we see another reminder that for officers, walking into a domestic is literally the most dangerous thing you can do. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I am your host as always, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mr. Target is the sponsor of today's video. If you're looking for excellently engineered steel targets that will withstand thousands and thousands of pistol, rifle, or shotgun rounds, Mr. Target is my go-to resource. They've got self-sealing rubber targets too, and you can see us use them all the time on the Active Self-Protection Extra YouTube channel. Hit the link in the description to check Mr. Target out and be sure to thank them for sponsoring today's video. Officers are here on a domestic. Mom, 2 little kids, 2 teenage kids. Dad, who they have an order of protection against, has violated the OP and is threatening everybody in the home with a firearm. And so mom has called for the police to come and help. They have showed up in a hurry. We have badge cams from both officers. Let's listen in and hear what happens.
5-2 gives the air. Door to the garage, everything's closed here.
Police department!
Police department, make yourself known! Get out of the house. Other units coming through the garage. Van Brett, you good?
I don't know.
Okay.
Don't worry about me right now. We gotta get to him.
5-2, go ahead and have it on fire and we're out the stage.
Police department!
Police department, make yourself known!
Shots fired! Shots fired! Go to your room. Get outside. Get out of the house.
Other units coming through the garage. Van Brett, you good?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not worried about me right now. We gotta get to him. We need to make sure fire didn't turn route. Something's got me in my leg, but I don't know what it is.
Hold what you got there, man. Hey, I've got cover. Check yourself right now.
I don't know, man. Like I said, something hit me in the leg.
I got you.
If you move, I am going to shoot you! Come out! I don't know. I think he just got my knife.
Okay, dude.
I can't tell.
Okay.
Make yourself known! Come into the garage, you're good!
Okay, right here.
Stay right where you are!
Right here. We've got.
He's down.
Is he down?
He's down. Man's down. Suspect down. Come with me.
The officer was struck by a bullet from the perp, but you can see that it actually bounced off his pocket knife. The perp actually died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound in this one. He actually also did end up taking the life of the 15-year-old in the house. The other child was injured as well at his hand. It's a pretty terrible outcome all around here. Hey, do you think they caught it, Mike? That those officers were rolling with some HKVP9s?
Well, I caught it. I texted you and I'm like, bro, those HKs. And
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, they were.
That was pretty cool. But, I mean, obviously the whole situation sucks. Obviously, these are as dangerous as they get, and these officers know that this guy is waving a gun around and threatening people, including the 15-year-old that he has an order of protection against. So these officers need to get in here. But you know, Mike, I really actually like that they're communicating pretty well. And then as the officer comes up to the first door here, he's going to open it and then announce himself and give it a little second to kind of breathe. And I think that combination of I need to get in there but not recklessly was really good decision making.
I'm not sure how much information they had, if someone told them the guy was armed or not, but either way, this is a great idea. Because what you don't want to do is just burst through that door into a hail of gunfire. So if you open the door, let it breathe for a moment, you give the opportunity for the bad guy to go, oh crap, there's someone coming in, I'm going to start shooting. As it turns out, nobody was shooting at them, so they took their time getting in. I think great, fantastic idea all the way around, not to run into a hail of bullets unnecessarily.
Obviously, if he's shooting, right? If people are actively dying, you're going to have to dive through that door. That's a time to press the gas pedal and go. If you have the time here, and again, trying to assess, and so these officers are kind of riding both gas and brakes at the same time. And I know that sounds weird, but it's actually a pretty good decision making here, because you've got to know, okay, I want to go, I want to get in here and protect innocent life. But like Mike just said, I don't want to run into a hail of bullets. I don't want to walk through the fatal funnel, as it were. It's kind of old terminology, but you get the point, and end up in a bad spot here.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been through a bunch of doors like this. Not so much when there was a call like this, but more like during a search warrant or a fourth waiver search, where the point is there's a bad guy in there and odds are he has a firearm and does not want to go to jail or back to prison. So this is something I've done a few times. I think this is pretty well done. We do want to talk real quick here for a moment about this sort of muzzling your partner. It's going to happen from time to time, but it really is unacceptable. You've got to train this sort of thing, like your reload, like a bunch of other important small tasks in law enforcement. Dipping your muzzle is something that should be so automatic you don't think about it. It's something that you can train on the range with blue guns or with dummy guns. Practice makes perfect. So practicing dipping your muzzle when someone walks in front of you, a good guy walks in front of you, is critical. You didn't do it for long, but longer than I would have liked.
Yeah, I stopped it here about 5 frames before he lowered the gun. So I think he saw him walk through and then went, oh no, and lowered his muzzle. That's great. You got to anticipate a little bit here. And listen, there's way more that he's paying attention to, wondering if people are dying and wondering if there's a deadly threat on the other side of the door. And I honor him for that, which is why this needs to be absolutely subconscious. It needs to be unconsciously competent, that you just do it as a part of life. And we do that not with live guns. We practice this with blue guns. We practice this as we're moving in structures, in force on force, so we don't end up being in these kinds of live situations. We need to stop here for just a second, Mike, because I want us to notice. Now, our partner has just been shot at. I think that this was the round that hit him in the pocket knife. And hey, thank God for luck, right? Luck counts both ways. But I want to note here, you have mom and 2 little kids. Now, I don't know if the officer saw mom and 2 little kids here, because I can't tell from the badge cam what the officer was looking at. But I want to note the peril of this situation. I've got 2 small children with bullets flying and an innocent bystander, their mom, with bullets flying. And so there has never been a time, I don't think, Mike, where it's more important to put accurate fire back at that deadly threat so that this threat stops to these innocents.
I know it seems like we're beating a dead horse here, right? But accuracy, competency, and confidence in your marksmanship are so very important as a law enforcement officer. This is exactly why. I want you to feel, if you're out there in the field and you're facing something like this, I want you to feel so confident in your ability that it's almost a gimme. Like, yes, I've got this. I'm a better shot than he or she is. I'm going to get accurate rounds. I'm going to get him effectively on a place on the bad guy where he's going to stop doing what he's doing all day long, no problem. That requires a lot more training than what your agency is probably going to give you, right? So get all the practice ammo you can and do this stuff on your own if you have to. Get yourself a Mantis, do a ton of dry fire, because this sort of thing is probably only going to happen once if it ever happens in your career, but it may be the most important moment of your entire career. So I want you to feel confident in your equipment and in your abilities in this moment of truth.
I also think it's worth saying that, listen, there's been fire by the bad guy and your partner is going down. Now, we end up finding out later that he wasn't injured because his pocket knife took that bullet. But you have to be the one that maybe you're an officer that you're like, hey, it's my partner who's the really good shooter. And so if we ever get in a gunfight, I'm going to depend on him. You may not be able to depend on him. It may be up to you. So you want to be the one that your partner can depend on, that if they're down, it's not a detriment to you two functioning. No, I'm going to put this guy down right now so that I can go and check on my partner and make sure he's okay and go and check in on these other kids. Now, also, he puts about 10 rounds down range here and then immediately goes for what we would call a proactive reload. This is what Tom Givens would call a proactive reload, at least, which is drop that half full magazine and put a new one in. And usually, you know, we'd say when there's a lull in the fight, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know that I would call this a lull, Mike. This felt like a pretty early mag switch to me.
Yeah, it does. Look, it's 50-50. If you're in this situation, you're going to do what you've trained to do. So if your training, repetitive training has been, as soon as there's the slightest lull in the fight, I don't know how many rounds I've shot, so I'm going to top off and make sure that I have enough rounds to finish the fight. As I understand, John informs me reliably, this is a 20-round magazine, HEK, Heckler & Koch magazine. So it was a little early. I'm not going to give too much guff for it because I feel like so many times you debrief cops who've been in shootings and you ask them, how many rounds do you think you fired? And they have no idea. So two things are going to come into play here. One is that. Did he know? Probably not. And he probably figured better to have a full gun in this moment. However, you just dropped 10 rounds. It might have been your last 10 rounds. So something to think about.
And it ended up not being a major factor in this. He puts a 17-rounder in there. That's great. I will say, from a gear selection position, I love having the 20-rounder in the gun. You're openly carrying the gun. That's great. Why not have a bunch of 20-rounders as your spares? Because, again, as an open carrier, you're not losing any concealment to have the extra rounds in there. Maybe there's a policy against that, maybe not. But getting that gun back in the fight quickly, his reload was pretty quick, and that was a very good thing. And as a police officer, you're very often going to have to reload in a real gunfight because you got to stay with it.
And as the one-armed deputy in Unforgiven said, I don't want to get killed for lack of shooting back. So here we continue with the action here. I think it's so incredibly important that once you have ground, once you've come out from behind cover or whatever, if you don't see a bad guy, if you're not getting shot at, that's your ground now. If you're going to come out more than once, I would strongly consider you don't come out at the same elevation every time in the exact same spot every time, because what you may not know is the bad guy sees you and is waiting for you to pop out again in that same spot to put a round in you. But John had some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, as Pat McNamara is famous for saying, people are pre-programmed to pick up patterns of predictability, and so you do not want to have those patterns of predictability. And also, the way that I always talk about it is every time you peek your head out there, you're putting chips in the pot. You are putting money in the pot. And so every time he pokes his head in there, he's committing more and taking bigger risks. Make the other guy put money in the pot if he wants to come out and see you. Once you've come out there and seen, is there anybody here? No, own that space. And we've seen this in thousands of force-on-force evolutions, that the people that play those kind of pop games end up really paying for it later. Let's look at Officer Van Brunt's badge cam now. I think that, again, did a pretty darn good job, has a lot coming his way. And he gets in there and I gotta go find the problem. So I see mom and babies, no problem. Okay, I'm going down the hallway here. And the second he comes down the hallway, he is confronted with a man pointing a gun at him. I get it, it looks like this is filmed on a potato at this point. I've really zoomed it in a long way. But you can see the guy has both arms up and a gun pointing at the officer. So number one, how good is your marksmanship skills? And you better know that in that moment, I'm better than you at this and I am going to get a hit. And you can only have that if your competence is up to it. And number two, I love the fact that he had a pistol-mounted light on here. I don't think a pistol-mounted light is a requirement for private citizens for concealed carry, but for cops carrying in a big old 5-gallon bucket off your waist, there's no reason not to have one. And this is literally the textbook case. It's not pitch dark in where he is, but it's darker than where the officers are, and getting this much light on there helps him to see. It was really good work.
You can't begin to imagine, viewers, the difficulty they would have in being able to see this guy at all. Never mind the fact that he's armed. So identifying the fact that he's armed, he's aiming a gun at you, is part of the equation, right? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say these officers and their department trains pretty hard on low light, because if you rewind a little bit, you'll see as soon as you run across a threshold into a slightly darker area, I mean very slightly, that light came on and it stayed on. We're not messing around with it. We're not doing on, off, on, off. We're not Navy SEALs, right? Turn the light on and leave it on. Unless there's a compelling reason to turn it back off again. Turns out it was absolutely the right thing to do, because here we see automatically, right off the bat, you come around the corner and you're faced with this problem. Having enough light to recognize that there is a threat is way more than half the battle. Otherwise, this guy starts shooting and you're behind the 8 ball because you haven't identified the threat until it's too late.
Yeah, when you're identifying the threat from his muzzle flash, that is a bad, bad day. Instead, our officer is up and on the threat, and you can tell he's pretty close to on the threat because you can see from a kind of gross aiming perspective where his pistol-mounted light is pointed. That's pretty much exactly where his gun is pointed. So he's a little off to the right now, but he's in the ballpark and he's getting close to be able to put a round on target. So great pistol-mounted light, understand and identify your threat, and then he gets after that threat, and I give him props for that. Now, I do have a couple of concerns and considerations here as he does, because one of the things that you're going to see here as we move it forward is the fact that he has his hand kind of over the slide here, and then as he goes back and he falls, he's shooting, and I want you to see his hand, his left hand, his support hand is kind of over the top of the slide here. Now, it didn't foul the gun that I can see. It looked like that gun kept functioning, and okay, good for that. Here's my little yay HK moment. But you want to grip the gun so that you're not worried about the gun going off and fouling in these kinds of situations. And also, you don't want to rip them rounds off into the ceiling because those aren't helping you.
Yeah, and I just want to say, it's possible, right? It's entirely possible. We can't see what's going on behind him or next to him, that his left elbow or arm struck something on the way down. That's what made this happen. But honestly, your grip should be your pinky power should be so engaged at this point that shouldn't actually knock the gun out. I will echo what John said, HK for the win. A lot of guns, this happens, and you're going to foul it. You're going to have a real big problem, because now you're in the middle of a gunfight with a gun that's not operating properly because you induced a malfunction. Fortunately for us and for him, that didn't happen here, and he was able to get back out of the way too. What I'm going to go out on a limb here and say is not cover, but better than nothing. So we're talking about things that are better than nothing. Anything's better than nothing when it comes to cover and concealment. He went to the quickest thing, the clearest thing he could see to him. It worked out. As we're going to see, it might have gone really differently. Fortunately, it didn't.
Yeah, it might have gone really differently, but fortunately, it didn't. And we say this all the time, you can't count on luck, but luck counts. And thankfully that our bad guy was not a good shooter here this day. But again, for both officers, you have to have the competence and the confidence that says, I'm better than you at this, and I'm going to win this fight no matter what. Now, our officer ends up hiding behind the couch here, and I do want to note that we're going to see him get behind the couch, but a couch is concealment, not cover. Now, that works identically in 99.9% of cases. However, what we're going to see here is you see that hole show up in the couch, and that's a pucker inducer right there. Now listen, it still worked. He didn't get hit by that bullet. The bad guy wasn't able to put a round on him, so concealment works identically to cover in 99.9% of cases. Now, that said, I think this is a really important one, Mike, and I know you wanted to speak to this, that you want to be the hunter here and not the rabbit. You don't want to be hiding behind the cover hoping he doesn't come looking for you. You want to use that briefly and quickly in order to launch your assault so that you are the one on offense here and he's taking fire, not giving it.
Yeah, I want to stress here, neither John nor I is calling these guys cowards or saying they weren't brave. They were incredibly brave to walk in the house in the first place. And they went in there to do the thing they signed up for. It's just that to do your job properly as a law enforcement officer, most especially in a situation like this, you have to overcome every instinct, every dumb brain thing that your brain is telling you to do. It's telling you to run, telling you to hide, telling you to get out of there. And you can't do any of those things. You've got to get in the fight. So understand, this is your mental rep. If you're watching this in training, this is probably your most important mental rep is you've got to get in the fight, because this guy starts advancing on you, you're going to end up toast. We filmed these at John's World Domination Studios in Phoenix, right? So I come up here for these. He showed me that hole in the sofa. I had not noticed it during my first watch through. Pucker inducing is absolutely correct. I promise you, when this officer watched this back and saw that, I guarantee he didn't see that round, didn't really realize that it happened. If that round is a few inches to the left as the shooter is shooting, We're talking about a femoral artery bleed. We're talking about a really bad situation. And a femoral artery bleed where you can't get paramedics in there right away because you still have an active shooting scene. So just take all these things into consideration. Be the hunter, not the rabbit. I know it's easy for me to say, but I just don't want you, in a position where you're being hunted by a bad guy. I want the bad guy to be afraid of you and running from you, not the other way around.
Yeah, and vet this in force-on-force training. So we talk about this all the time. If you're a private citizen, you can do this as well, but law enforcement officers, they do get some force-on-force training. And the guys who end up, loving their cover so much that they move in behind it, end up getting shot by the guys who use their cover for a quick base in order to move. And you've got to take that into account here. Now, once again, I am not giving these officers a hard time. These guys are studs. I think they communicated really well together. I think they handled their business. And yes, our perp died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He did not die from wounds from the officers. They did hit him, but that knocked him down, and then the coup de grace he gave to himself. Great. That's just as effective a stop as it needed to be. And my heart goes out to this family because this kind of domestic blow up is terrible, and they're going to have to live with that literally for the rest of their lives, and nothing is ever going to bring that back. So my heart goes out to them, but we want to be the ones that come and help them at the end of the day.
Yeah, one more thing, just a note. I said this before, but it bears repeating, right? This family is shattered forever. They'll never be the same again. There's just no chance of that. No amount of therapy and everything else. Do all those things, right? But it's never going to be the same again. There's going to be a giant gaping void where their family used to be. For these officers, you have just witnessed something terribly traumatic. You need to recognize that, and whatever help your department is offering you, avail yourself of it, because you can't stuff this stuff down. You can't hide it in that vault in the back of your head for the rest of your life, because it was going to come out one way or another. Better that come out in front of a licensed professional or a colleague or someone you can talk to than some other way. Booze, drugs, whatever else it might be. Get the help. You need it. Even if you think you don't need it, get it anyway. At the end of the day, these guys were extremely brave. They walked into a really bad situation and did their best and covered their ass.